You just finished a scraping run and the next target is already soft blocking your IP. You want a fresh mobile IP right now, not in 20 minutes when the carrier feels like rotating you on its own clock. That gap between the IP you have and the IP you need is the whole problem this video solves. I run a hardware proxy farm in Singapore. Real phones, real SIM cards from Singtel, M1 and StarHub. So when I talk about rotating a mobile IP, I am not talking about a pool of data center addresses with a fresh label slapped on them. I am talking about a real phone renegotiating its session with the carrier and coming back with a brand new IP from that carrier's own range. That distinction matters more than people expect. A data center IP rotates by handing you a different machine. A mobile IP rotates by the same phone getting reassigned by the carrier, which is exactly what every real phone on the network does all day. Sites know the difference, and that is why a clean carrier rotation looks like ordinary traffic instead of a bot. There are two ways a mobile IP rotates, and mixing them up is where most people quietly ruin a job without ever seeing an error message. The first way is timed carrier rotation. The second way is on-demand rotation. Almost every rotation question you will ever have comes down to knowing which of the two you are using and when to lean on each. Let me take timed rotation first, because it is the one you mostly stop thinking about once you understand it. Time rotation is just the network doing what it always does. Every real phone gets reassigned an address as the carrier manages its pool, and your proxy port simply rides along with that. You do nothing, and over minutes or hours, the exit IP drifts to a new one on its own. It is steady, it is hands-off, and it is fine for slow background work where you do not care exactly when the IP turns over. What it is not is precise. You cannot tell timed rotation to change right now because the next target just blocked me. That precision is what on-demand rotation gives you. You send a request to a small endpoint, a rotation URL tied to your port, and the gateway forces the modem behind that port to grab a fresh carrier IP on the spot. You are not waiting for a schedule. You are asking for a new IP and getting one in a few seconds. This is the mode you reach for when something just went wrong and you need to react, or when you are moving deliberately from one task to the next and want a clean address for each. Timed rotation is the background hum. On-demand rotation is the button you press when it actually counts. Here is roughly how that rotation URL works under the hood, without the deep plumbing. You send a request to the endpoint, usually carrying a token that proves the port is yours. The gateway receives it and tells the modem to drop and rebuild its carrier session. The carrier then hands the modem a new IP from its range, and your next request through the port simply goes out on that new address. From your side, it is one call and a short wait. You are not managing modems or sessions yourself. You are sending one signal and letting the gateway do the physical work. The detail that makes all of this sane is that you never talk to the raw IP. You always connect to the same stable gateway host and port, and the IP sitting behind it is the thing that moves. That is why you can rotate all day and your code never has to change its connection string. You point at the gateway once, and rotation happens behind it. If you ever find yourself trying to hard-code the raw mobile IP, stop, because the entire design assumes that address is temporary. The gateway is your fixed point, the IP is the moving part, and that split is the whole trick. Now the part that actually decides whether you stay unblocked, which is when to rotate. The honest answer is that timing matters far more than frequency. People obsess over rotating often, when what really protects them is rotating at the right moments and never at the wrong ones. So let me give you the right moments first. Rotate after you finish a task. You scrape the page, you pull the data, the work on that IP is done. That is the clean moments to ask for a new IP before the next unrelated task begins, so nothing carries over from one job to the next. Rotate after a soft block. If a target starts feeding you captchas or throttling you on an IP that was perfectly fine a minute ago, that IP is burned for that target. Get a fresh one and continue. Of all the triggers, this is the single most useful one, and it is the reason on-demand rotation exists at all. Rotate between account sessions too. If you are managing several accounts, each one should sit on its own clean IP. Finish with one account, rotate, then start the next. You never want two of your accounts going out back to back on the same exit IP, because that is exactly the footprint that links them together in a platform's eyes. And here is the part almost everyone skips, which is when to never rotate. Never rotate in the middle of a login. Never rotate in the middle of a checkout. These are the two moments where a fresh IP helps you not at all and hurts you badly. Think about what the site actually sees. You begin a login from one IP, and halfway through, between the password and the second factor, your address jumps to a completely different one. To the site that looks like a session being hijacked mid-flight, and it is an instant flag. A checkout is the same story, where the card, the payment, and the confirmation all need to come from one steady address. So the rule is simple. Anything that has to feel like one continuous person, you finish on a single sticky IP first, and only then do you rotate. Sticky IP carries the session through to the end. The rotation happens in the quiet gap afterward, never in the middle of it. So the pattern I actually run is simple to say and easy to get wrong. Do the whole unit of work on one sticky IP. When the task is genuinely done, call rotate. Then, and this is the step you cannot skip, confirm the exit IP really changed before you continue. That confirmation matters because rotation is neither instant nor guaranteed. The modem takes a few seconds to renegotiate, and once in a while it comes back on the very same IP it had before. If you fire your next task immediately, you might be running on the old burned address and have no idea until the blocks pile up. So the loop looks like this. You work on the sticky IP, you call the rotation URL. You wait a few seconds for the session to rebuild. You check your exit IP back through the same port. If it reads the same as before, you wait and check again rather than charging ahead. Only once you see a genuinely different IP do you let the next task start. Let me be concrete about that check, because this is where solid setups separate from fragile ones. You record the IP before you rotate. You call rotate, you poll your own exit IP endpoint through the port maybe once a second for up to 15 or 20 seconds. The moment the new IP differs from the old one, you proceed. If the window passes and it never changed, you treat that as an error, not as success. While you are doing that check, confirm one more thing in the same breath. Confirm the new IP is still on a carrier ASIN. Look the address up and make sure the network owner is the mobile carrier Singtel or M1 or StarHub and not some data center range that slipped into the path. Today, a real mobile IP always traces back to a carrier. If what you see is not a carrier, then something is wrong with the route, and you would much rather catch that in your own check than have a target catch it for you. The S in is the seed that proves the IP is what you paid for. Now let me talk about error handling, because rotation in the real world is not a clean, happy path. 3 things go wrong, and each one has a clear response. The first is the rotation that times out and never changes the IP. When that happens, do not loop on it forever. Back off, log it, and either retry once after a pause or set that port aside and use another while it recovers. The second failure is the rotation that succeeds but lands you on an IP that is already soft blocked by your target. That happens because carrier pools are finite and you can draw a recently used address. The fix is the same loop, just run again. Rotate, verify it changed, and if the new one is also blocked, rotate once more rather than retrying your request on a dead IP. The third failure is the stuck modem, where the same IP comes back over and over no matter how many times you rotate. That is a hardware level problem, not something more rotation calls will fix. The right move is to stop hammering that port, flag it, and let the heavier recovery path handle it. On my farm, there is a different action entirely, and beating on the rotation URL just makes it worse. That leads straight into the one rule that keeps your whole setup healthy over the long run. Respect the rotation rate limits. A real phone does not enjoy being told to renegotiate its carrier session every few seconds, and the carrier likes it even less. So space your rotations out. Give yourself a sensible gap between calls on the same port, something on the order of a couple of minutes rather than firing on every single request. Rotate when you have a reason, after a task, or after a soft block, not on a frantic timer. Treat the line like the real device it is, and it stays fast and clean for you. Do all of this and the whole thing gets boring in the best possible way. You work on a stable sticky IP, you rotate on real signals instead of nerves, you verify every change against both the IP and the SIM, and you stay on clean carrier IPs that sites treat like any other phone on the network. There is no secret beyond that. The discipline is the trick. If you want this running on real Singapore mobile IPs, that is exactly what I sell. Rarens S3 carrier IPs straight from my own farm. Sticky sessions so a login holds steady on one address, on-demand rotation through a rotation URL for the moment you need a fresh IP, and DNS that routes through the tunnel so you are not leaking your real location out the side. You can grab a trial at singaporemobileproxy.com/client/trial, and the code YT30 takes 30% off your first month. Subscribe for 2 new videos every weekday.